Usually when we talk about a business scaling up or going through some kind of major digital transformation, well, there's this expectation of absolute precision.
Right. Like it is all just going to work perfectly out of the box.
Exactly. You think of it like engineering a massive suspension bridge, you map out the software architecture, the project dashboard shows a clean green light, and the consultant just points at a beautifully formatted graph and says, well, there it is. We are automated. Everything is clean and simple.
Yeah, and it is completely binary to them. It is either an automated process or a manual process. There is no gray area in a slide deck.
And it is deeply comforting to executives. We like things to be visible. We like things to be neatly categorized. But then you step into the real world. You step into social impact technology or emerging markets, or frankly, any complex human organization. And suddenly that pristine dashboard is completely broken. We are looking at an operational landscape that is honestly incredibly murky.
Oh, it is the absolute definition of a muddy field reality. I mean, the builders in Silicon Valley often lack the context of a rolling blackout in Lagos or a supply chain collapse in rural Ghana. They write code for a perfect environment that simply does not exist in the physical world.
Yeah, exactly. And the human capital is breaking under the weight of it all.
Yeah.
If you are listening to this deep dive, you already know we are looking at a modern tech ecosystem that is just drowning in empty automation hype.
Completely drowning.
Every single day, there is a new startup claiming they have completely optimized their workforce with artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
But when you look under the hood, it is absolute chaos. The employees are miserable, the data is corrupted, and the actual mission of the company is just failing.
Which brings us to the core subject of our deep dive today. We are exploring the exact friction point where these systems fail, and more importantly, how they are actually fixed. So we are doing a high-stakes biographical analysis of the career evolution of Sundaraj Kühn.
Right. And he operates as a social impact tech advisor, an AI human systems orchestrator, and a strategic foresight architect.
Yeah, and I want to be clear about the tone here. We are not just going to read a resume today. We are looking through an authentic Gen Z professional lens.
Which means we are completely bypassing the public relations fluff. We are going to tell it exactly like it is.
Exactly. Because we have gathered his internal source documents, we have recommendation letters from global colleagues, and deployed project data from all around the world. So we are going to unpack this entirely.
Let us get right into it. I'm going to put on my cynical venture capitalist hat for a second. Because whenever I see a background that jumps across very different fields, well, my initial reaction is that this person lacks focus. The traditional corporate recruiter looks at this and calls them a jack of all trades.
Right.
And let us be honest, that is usually a polite way of saying they get bored easily.
It is. It is almost always a backhanded compliment in the corporate world because the traditional model demands deep specialization in one narrow vertical. You are a marketing person or you are a database engineer.
Yeah, pick a lane, basically.
Exactly. But the documentation we are analyzing frames his relentless multidisciplinary evolution entirely differently. It is not a lack of focus. It is a rare masterclass in hyper-adaptability.
Okay.
I mean, he possesses an elite and highly unconventional academic background that serves as a massive strategic asset for complex enterprise integrations.
All right, let us look at the roots of this adaptability then. He started his academic career in classical philology at St. Joseph's College of Maine, where he graduated cum laude.
Yeah.
So we're talking about Latin and ancient Greek textual analysis.
Yes.
Now, I have to admit some massive confusion here. Because how on earth does studying dead languages translate to building artificial intelligence systems in the modern era? I mean, it sounds like a massive disconnect.
I know it sounds like a disconnect, but that is the perfect question. And this is where the underlying mechanics get really interesting. If you think about what classical philology actually is, well, it's not just memorizing vocabulary flashcards. Latin is a highly inflected language.
Wait, before we move on, for the non-linguist listening, what does inflected mean in this specific context?
Oh, right. It means the meaning of a word and its function in a sentence is determined by its ending, not necessarily its order in the sentence.
Okay.
So in English, word order is everything. The dog bit the man means something very different than the man bit the dog.
Yeah, obviously.
But in Latin, those words can be scrambled in almost any order. And the specific endings tell you who is doing the biting.
Okay, so you cannot just read left to right and immediately understand what is happening. You have to literally hold the entire sentence in your working memory, map out all the relationships, and calculate the dependencies before you can even understand the basic meaning.
Precisely. It is the rigorous parsing of incredibly complex, highly structured, ancient syntax. When you translate a dense Latin text, you are essentially reverse engineering the logical architecture of the thought process of the author. You are mapping relational dependencies between words. You are understanding context windows. And you are dealing with deeply nested clauses.
Wait a minute, you are describing exactly how large language models work.
Yes, exactly. That is the whole point. An artificial intelligence model relies on an attention mechanism to weigh the relational dependencies of tokens in a sequence. Parsing ancient syntax builds the exact logical architecture needed for modern AI prompt engineering and multi-agent workflows.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he is not just typing casual questions into a chat interface. He is utilizing the structural logic forged in Latin to dictate exact technical parameters to generative AI systems.
That's fascinating.
It is why he excels at prompt engineering and building intelligent information extraction solutions.
Yeah.
Because he understands the foundational architecture of language itself.
That is a phenomenal connection. It takes the idea of a liberal arts degree and literally weaponizes it for modern computing.
Right.
So, okay, he builds this foundation of linguistic logic, and then he pivots into geopolitics and strategy.
Right.
He minors in political science and writes his thesis on the development of democracy in Iceland, which is interesting.
And Iceland is a fascinating choice because it is a highly isolated, distinct sociopolitical ecosystem with a very unique evolutionary path for its governance. But he does not stop at political theory.
Right, he goes further.
He then pursues a Master of Arts in Diplomacy and Military Strategy at Hawaii Pacific University, graduating with distinction.
And Hawaii Pacific University is deeply embedded in the Pacific Strategic Theater. That is serious operational business.
And his graduate thesis there focused on the Afrikaner population.
Correct. And think about what that means. When you study military strategy and diplomacy at that level, and you focus on a complex demographic like the Afrikaners in South Africa, you are studying entrenched cultural dynamics. You are looking at historical siege mentalities and the mechanics of conflict resolution.
So it is very heavy on human psychology.
Very heavy. This provided him with highly specialized training in crisis management, risk mechanics, human intelligence, and cultural intelligence, or as the intelligence community calls it, humanity and cultanty. Okay, I'm going to push back again here, because if I am running a scaling tech company, why do I care about his military diplomacy degree? I am not negotiating a peace treaty. I am just trying to launch a software product.
Because scaling a tech company, especially in emerging markets, is essentially a series of diplomatic and operational crises.
Wait, really?
Yes. When a venture capital-backed startup expands into a new territory, they are not just deploying code, they are colliding with local regulations, cultural resistance, infrastructural deficits, and internal team panic.
Okay, that makes sense.
If you deploy an agricultural artificial intelligence tool in a rural village, and the local farmers refuse to use it because they do not trust the interface, well, that is an entrenched cultural dynamic. You need diplomatic conflict resolution, not a software patch.
Right, you cannot just push a GitHub update to fix human trust.
Exactly. Simon approaches these situations not like a panicked software developer, but like a trained diplomat managing a volatile strategic transition. He understands human risk mechanics inherently.
Okay, so we have the linguistic logic for the artificial intelligence, and we have the crisis diplomacy for the human element. But the tech world runs on hard empirical data. I mean, you cannot just talk your way through an algorithmic failure.
And that is exactly where the next pillar of his foundation comes in. He grounded all of this theoretical and strategic knowledge with hardcore data training. He completed the Massachusetts Institute of Technology course on the challenges of global poverty.
MIT, I mean, that is the big leagues for data analysis.
It is, and the instructors for that specific program were Esther Duflo and Abhijit Banerjee.
Okay, wait, I know those names.
You probably do. They won the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences in 2019 for their experimental approach to alleviating global poverty.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Under their curriculum, Simon mastered econometric data models, empirical research interpretation, and causal impact evaluation.
Okay, let us apply the explain like I am 5 rule here. Because for the people who are not data scientists, what does an econometric model actually look like in the context of a social impact project?
Okay, so it means you are using rigid statistical frameworks to isolate cause and effect. You are not just looking at a graph that says crop yields went up and blindly assuming your new software caused it.
Right, because correlation does not equal causation.
Exactly. An econometric model strips away the noise. It accounts for the weather patterns, the local economy, the political situation, and it proves mathematically whether your specific technological intervention actually caused the positive outcome, or if it was just a random statistical coincidence. This is the science of proving exactly what works using rigid frameworks.
And, looking at the sources, he also holds certified training in Microsoft Azure cloud systems, specifically in artificial intelligence architectures, plus humanitarian leadership certifications from the Humanitarian Leadership Academy. So he bridges the deepest human challenges with the most advanced cloud infrastructures available.
Exactly. He is orchestrating the entire ecosystem.
Let us go back to that suspension bridge analogy we used at the beginning. If building a modern enterprise is like building a massive bridge, a standard computer science graduate only knows how to calculate the tension of the steel cables. They know the math.
Right.
But Simon understands the geology of the riverbed holding the concrete anchors. He knows how to negotiate with the city council to get the permits. He understands the psychological impact the bridge will have on the neighborhoods it connects. And he can still calculate the cable tension. It is the ultimate unconventional edge elevated to a master level across every vertical.
That is a highly accurate way to frame his utility. And honestly, that brings us directly to his role as the transition orchestrator and his core thesis regarding the modern technology industry, because his internal documentation lays this out like a hard-hitting manifesto.
Yeah, I read that part.
Simon has an absolute core thesis which states that reckless artificial intelligence transitions are built on a foundational lie.
The myth of frictionless automation. The tech industry loves to sell this dream. They say, just buy our enterprise software, flip a switch, fire half your staff, and watch your profits soar. But Simon completely calls out this narrative.
And he calls it out because he has seen the actual deployment data. In the commercial tech world, this reckless automation results in severe organizational culture rot and massive employee churn.
Because everyone is stressed out.
Exactly. When leaders prioritize pure computational velocity over human friction, they create highly toxic work environments. Employees feel alienated, they feel misunderstood, and they are constantly threatened by poorly implemented algorithms that do not actually understand the nuance of their daily tasks.
And according to the case files in the social impact sector, it is even worse. It is an absolute mission killer. When organizations rush to deploy cold automation just for the sake of checking a digital transformation box for their donors, well, they inadvertently turn purpose-driven operations into sterile, automated ghost towns.
If you are an international non-governmental organization, your entire value proposition is based on human empathy, community trust, and localized understanding.
Right.
If you replace your frontline community coordinators with an uncalibrated, multi-agent artificial intelligence system, you instantly sever the trust you spent decades building. The system might look incredibly efficient on an executive dashboard, but in the physical world, it is actively destroying your mission.
The muddy field reality, that phrase really sticks with me, because most digital architectures fail since they are built by engineering purists who optimize for pure computational velocity. But they have never stood in a muddy field or handled an international crisis.
Exactly. The builders in Silicon Valley often lack the context of a fragile supply chain. And conversely, the social impact advocates on the ground often lack the technical vocabulary to safely guide multi-agent networks.
So there's a massive communication gap.
A huge gap. And Simon operates squarely in the high-friction intersection of that structural divide.
I want to push back on this again, because I can hear a venture capital partner listening to this and just rolling their eyes. They might hear the phrase team well-being and immediately dismiss it. They might say, look, treating team well-being as a priority is just soft human resources talk dressed up in technical language.
Oh yeah, I hear that argument all the time.
Right. They say we need to hit our quarterly revenue targets. We do not have time for group therapy for our engineering team. How does Simon respond to that specific critique?
He responds by firmly rejecting the premise that well-being is a soft metric. Simon treats team well-being as a rigid, non-negotiable systems engineering requirement. He is not talking about adding a ping pong table to the break room or hosting trust falls.
Right, no pizza parties.
Exactly, no pizza parties. He is talking about the literal operational uptime of the human network. When humans burn out, systems crash. It is an operational fact.
So how does he actually engineer well-being into a software system?
By strategically deploying intelligent agents to absorb high-volume cognitive friction.
Okay, define cognitive friction for us.
Cognitive friction is the repetitive, mentally draining data entry. The endless cross-referencing. The formatting of compliance reports that completely exhausts a workforce. It is the friction that grinds human creativity to an absolute halt. By automating that specific heavy lifting, teams reclaim what Simon calls their creative margin.
Creative margin. I really love that concept.
It is essential. When you restore a team's creative margin, you unlock deeper mission execution. You eliminate the late-night existential crises that plague overworked teams. Well-being is a literal uptime metric.
That makes a lot of sense.
Because if your human team is too exhausted to critically evaluate the output of an artificial intelligence model, the model will eventually hallucinate. It will make a massive error, and your enterprise will suffer severe financial and reputational damage. Protecting the humans is the literal only way to protect the technology.
That makes perfect operational sense. You cannot have a high-functioning machine if the biological components operating it are completely degraded. And this philosophy transitions perfectly into his actual operational framework, the impact triangle architecture.
Yes, the impact triangle is the structural blueprint Simon uses to implement his advisory methodology. It sits at the absolute center of a triangular impact ecosystem, balancing three critical pillars.
Let us break down the mechanics of those three pillars. So first is industrial AI capabilities. This involves utilizing Azure data management pipelines, multi-agent workflows, and generative AI orchestration. This is basically the raw computational power.
Right. Second is human cognition. As we just discussed, this is focused on preserving team margin, protecting well-being, and utilizing skills management frameworks and design thinking to ensure the digital workplace is actually adapted for human psychological use.
Okay, and the third pillar is sustainable outcomes. This demands empirical data proof, market viability, and rigorous statistical validation like randomized controlled trials. It is about proving that the system actually works in reality, not just in theory.
And what is crucial here is how these 3 points interact. Let us bring back your suspension bridge analogy. Industrial AI is the tension cable pulling the structure up. Human cognition is the flexible road deck that actually carries the traffic. Sustainable outcomes are the concrete anchors buried in the bedrock.
I see.
Simon does not approach technology as an isolated product. He treats it as an ecosystem deployment where code, community, psychology, and structural economic validation must be in constant equilibrium. If you pull too hard on the AI cables without reinforcing the flexible human deck, the entire bridge snaps.
Wow, yeah.
If you focus only on the human deck without anchoring it in sustainable economic outcomes, you run out of funding and the bridge collapses into the river.
Now here is where the macrofishing gets really fascinating. For social impact ventures and international non-governmental organizations, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are generally the absolute gold standard. I mean, everyone is aiming for the 2030 targets, eradicate poverty, ensure clean water, things like that.
Right.
However, the sources indicate that Simon views hitting a major target as a massive danger zone where regression can occur.
This is a profound insight derived from his strategic foresight training. Because in military strategy, taking the hill is only the first part of the battle. Holding the hill and ensuring you do not lose it the next day is much harder. When an organization hits a massive target, like a United Nations goal, there is a natural psychological tendency to celebrate, to relax, and just declare victory.
And that is exactly when the underlying systems begin to decay. Funding drops, attention shifts, the maintenance teams are reassigned, and the original problem quietly returns.
Precisely. This is known as regression to the mean in project management. We can extrapolate that Simon created this triad architecture to ensure continuous progress and adaptability. Enterprises must sustain growth without getting too comfortable. They need a macro overview that outlives any projected life cycle of a single project.
So you're saying if you only build a system to reach a 2030 goal, what happens in 2031?
Exactly. The technology will be obsolete, the funding will dry up, and the infrastructure will rot.
And we are not just talking about incremental technological changes over the next decade. We are talking about massive paradigm shifts. The convergence horizon is approaching. Artificial general intelligence is not just a science fiction concept anymore. It is a highly probable near-term reality. We need to be able to connect all technology as one holistic ecosystem.
Yeah. When artificial general intelligence arrives, the lines between separate software tools will completely dissolve. Enterprises will operate as singular, highly interconnected, intelligent networks.
Right.
If your organization is still operating with siloed human resources departments and isolated data servers, the arrival of general intelligence will fracture your infrastructure entirely. Simon's triad architecture, balancing AI, human cognition, and sustainable outcomes, is an absolute necessity for survival in a post-AGI environment. It provides the flexibility required to adapt to exponential technological acceleration.
This is exactly why visionary founders need someone with his level of foresight. It is not just about writing a better line of code today. It is about ensuring the entire corporate structure can withstand the technological shockwaves of tomorrow. And you know what is incredible is that Simon does not just write about this theory from a comfortable academic office. He deploys it globally. Let us examine his global and sectorial transitions.
Simon possesses a highly unique ability to transition fluidly across continents from Europe and the United States to emerging market ecosystems in Nigeria, Ghana, and Uganda. He transitions across industries and cultures with the exact same adaptability he applies to technology.
Let us map out the deployment scaffolding, because the actual fieldwork is where the theory gets tested. The sources detail several specific advisory deployments. Let us start in Nigeria. He works as a strategic advisor with a venture called Hazy Dreams in Lagos.
At Hazy Dreams, he provides high-level strategic guidance on business development and fundraising positioning. But what is truly notable here is his integration of open-source intelligence along with ISO compliance coordination.
Let us pause on open source intelligence. What does that actually mean in the context of a startup in Lagos?
Okay, so open source intelligence, or OSINT, involves gathering and analyzing data from publicly available sources to generate actionable intelligence. He is using deep market research, public records, and satellite data to build high-level public-private partnerships.
So he is not just guessing.
Not at all. He is taking early-stage ideas and structuring them into viable market options that can attract serious institutional capital. He ensures they meet rigid international compliance standards so that global investors feel secure deploying capital into an emerging market.
So he is literally bridging the gap between innovative local ideas and rigid international investment standards. Now let us shift gears entirely and look at the Swiss ecosystem. He has done extensive work in Bern, Switzerland with an internationally celebrated nonprofit called Spring ACT, which stands for Action Compassion Technology.
His roles at Spring ACT over several years showcase his immense operational range. He worked in the background as an office manager, a volunteer coordinator, and a fundraising and business development manager.
And a major part of his work there revolved around Chatbot Sophia. Now, for those listening who are not familiar, Chatbot Sophia is the world's first global artificial intelligence-driven chatbot empowering survivors of domestic violence. It operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, across more than 20 languages.
It is an incredibly high-stakes deployment of generative AI. You are dealing with highly sensitive human trauma, strict data privacy concerns, and complex international legal resources.
Yeah, the stakes are massive.
If a chatbot hallucinating a recipe is bad, imagine a chatbot hallucinating legal advice to a domestic violence survivor in crisis. The stakes are absolute.
So how do you architect a system that prevents those hallucinations while still providing empathetic responses? I mean, that sounds nearly impossible.
You need strict contextual boundaries. That requires the structural logic we discussed from his classical philology days to build rigid guardrails into the prompt architecture.
Okay, right, bringing the Latin logic back into it.
Exactly. And it requires immense human empathy to ensure the tone is appropriate. Simon was heavily involved in supporting the editorial structure strategy and business development positioning for this tool. He helped scale the narrative footprint of the platform, bridging the gap between raw software development metrics and sensitive human rights advocacy language.
He translated the cold code into warm compassion, essentially, so that international civil society stakeholders could actually trust the tool. And, his leadership extends to other initiatives within the Spring ACT ecosystem, too. You mentioned Comeback Cat Z in the case files?
Yes. Comeback Cat Z is an initiative utilizing gamification and technology to combat imposter syndrome and sexism. Simon acted as the lead coordinator for their global hackathon. And incredibly, he also served as an AI content artist, utilizing artificial intelligence-generated visual storytelling to create engaging gamified experiences.
I mean, from managing ISO compliance in Nigeria to generating AI art to fight imposter syndrome in Switzerland, the range is truly staggering, and we are not even done. Let us look at his work in deep field agriculture. He is an advisor building deep field agricultural solutions with Soil Solutions Ghana.
In Ghana, he is embedded with the founding team to scale regenerative agriculture and AI-driven farming systems. He coordinates operational inputs to ensure the technology actually works in rural, underserved communities.
Right. And finally, he is the founder and creative director of Soar to Live, an audio and video media company based in Penang, Malaysia. Soar to Live uses human-centric principles and AI-powered production workflows to help founders and social impact leaders amplify their missions and voices.
And you know what connects all of these disparate roles across Nigeria, Switzerland, Ghana, and Malaysia is his core methodology.
Yeah.
He's always architecting systems that empower the human element, regardless of the industry or the geography.
I'm going to use another analogy here to tie this together. Because Simon's career transitions remind me of a master linguist who not only speaks a dozen languages fluently, but can write technical manuals and emotional poetry in all of them simultaneously.
That is a great way to put it.
He speaks the language of the diplomat, the language of the rural farmer, the language of the software engineer, and the language of the traumatized survivor. He translates human rights advocacy into software metrics, and software metrics into venture capital pitches. It is a phenomenal capability.
And that translation capability is exactly why he is so effective at generating empirical proof, which leads us perfectly into the next critical phase of our analysis, empirical proof over hype.
Yes. This is where we get into the absolute core of why an impact investor or venture capital partner should care. Because the market is flooded with pitch decks promising to change the world using artificial intelligence.
Oh, absolutely flooded.
It is incredibly easy to spin an empty tech for good narrative, put a smiling face on a slide, throw in the word AI, and ask for $10 million. But the internal documentation makes it explicitly clear that Simon completely rejects empty narratives. He demands rigorous literature-backed effect sizes and structured validation frameworks.
He operates with the exact scientific rigor he learned from the Nobel laureates at MIT. Let us examine the reality check of Soil Solutions Ghana and the Pharmacist AI ecosystem, because this is the perfect physical and digital proof of his methodology in action.
Right. Pharmacist AI is not just a chatbot floating in a server farm somewhere. It is connected to actual physical reality in the dirt.
The ecosystem consists of two distinct layers. First, there is the physical layer. They deploy high-durability hardware called the soil tester directly into remote agricultural fields in Ghana. This hardware provides instantaneous diagnostic evaluation of critical soil health indicators right at the point of cultivation.
Which completely bypasses the slow, expensive, and logistically impossible laboratory backlogs that usually plague smallholder farmers in emerging markets.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If a rural farmer has to take a soil sample, mail it to a lab in the capital city, and wait 3 weeks for a result, their crop might already be dead by the time the letter arrives.
Exactly. The physical hardware solves the immediate diagnostic latency. Then you have the intelligence layer, which is the Pharmacist AI platform. This is a highly advanced, localized, multilingual, generative AI chatbot ecosystem engineered specifically for climate-smart farming.
Okay.
It takes the raw data from the physical soil hardware, combines it with high-resolution satellite imagery and land degradation metrics, and instantly generates tailored site-specific recommendations for regenerative farming.
And crucially, how does this actually reach the farmer? Because a high-tech dashboard is completely useless if the farmer does not have a 5G connection.
Well, this intelligence layer is uniquely optimized for low-bandwidth mobile networks and delivered fully in native local languages. It is accessible via widely adopted mobile interfaces like WhatsApp or basic SMS text messaging.
Yeah, it's smart.
The data packets are compressed and engineered to transmit over a basic 2G or 3G cellular connection. It is actually usable by the people who need it most right there in the muddy field. This is not a luxury tool for a high-tech greenhouse in California. This is deep field deployment.
But having a great tool is not enough for Simon. He requires the gold standard of validation to prove it actually works. That is why Soil Solutions Ghana has moved into active design phase monitoring and evaluation planning with Innovations for Poverty Action.
Innovations for Poverty Action, or IPA. They are globally renowned for their rigorous scientific evaluations of development interventions. They do not just take your word for it, they measure reality.
Yes, they are partnering to execute a full-scale randomized controlled trial. Now, let us explain what a randomized controlled trial, or RCT, actually is, because it is the exact same methodology used in medical trials to test new pharmaceuticals.
Exactly.
You have a treatment group of farmers that gets the Pharmacist AI and a control group of farmers that does not. Then you measure the exact causal impact over time between the two groups.
You completely eliminate the marketing fluff. You cannot hide behind vanity metrics like user downloads or page views in a randomized controlled trial. You either grew more food or you did not.
Right. So what are the hard, specific metrics they are engineering toward?
The targets are deeply literature-backed. Based on World Bank models, bridging the extension gap via digital channels unlocks a 20 to 30% increase in overall crop yields. Simon is engineering the system to hit a target of greater than or equal to a 0.3 to 0.5 standard deviation improvement in overall crop yields.
To put that standard deviation metric into plain language for a second, a 0.5 standard deviation improvement in agriculture is a massive, highly visible increase in the amount of food a farmer harvests. It is the difference between scraping by and having a surplus to sell at the market.
Huge difference.
They are also measuring quantifiable increases in baseline household agricultural income and statistically verified improvements in farmer confidence during critical climate risk decision-making windows.
And the global community is recognizing this empirical rigor. Pharmacist AI was evaluated and selected by the International Telecommunication Union and global stakeholders as a finalist for the 2025 AI for Good AI for Planet Awards.
It's a big deal.
And his previous work with Chatbot Sophia at Spring ACT actually won the 2025 AI for Good Impact Award for pro bono collaboration.
Wow.
Yeah, these are elite global honors evaluating real-world empirical impact, not just conceptual pitch deck ideas.
So let me ask you this. If setting up a randomized controlled trial and proving actual causal impact is the gold standard, why do so many venture capital firms accept vague pitch decks and back unproven ideas? Why is the tech industry so addicted to the hype cycle?
Well, the venture capital world is often driven by the fear of missing out. When a new technology like generative AI emerges, funds rush to deploy capital quickly to establish a position in the market before their competitors do. They optimize for user acquisition and viral growth metrics rather than causal impact, because viral growth can lead to a quick exit or a higher valuation in the next funding round. It is a financial mechanics game based on momentum.
But the social impact sector cannot afford to play that financial momentum game.
Exactly. If a food delivery app fails, people get their dinner slightly later. If an agricultural artificial intelligence tool fails in a rural community dealing with severe climate change, crops die and families face starvation.
The stakes are just totally different.
Completely different. Simon's rigorous development economics training forces him to prove actual causal impact because the human stakes are simply too high. And from an investor perspective, this rigorous validation actually protects venture capital partners from backing vaporware. An impact investor backing a project with an RCT framework is making an empirically secure, highly defensible investment.
Which brings us to synthesizing all of this into the equilibrium of his evolution. We are looking at the coloration of Simon's past and present resilience to ensure that your startup or enterprise is future ready to make the world a better place. We have looked at classical languages,
Right.
military strategy, cloud architecture, and deep field agriculture.
He operates on a foundational philosophy of one step, one system, and one team. This methodology ensures that artificial intelligence, human cognition, and real-world outcomes are in a state of constant synchronized equilibrium.
Right.
He does not try to boil the ocean all at once or rip out your entire legacy system in a weekend. He takes the messy, high-volume reality of a transitioning enterprise and stabilizes it systematically step by step.
And it is vital to emphasize that this entire philosophy is built on lived experience over theory. The recommendations we read highlight his warmth, his friendliness, his ability to connect with highly diverse groups, and his innate talent for bringing individuals together under extreme pressure.
Yeah, he is very hands-on.
He volunteers extensively. He has served as a volunteer editor and writer for Pop Politics, dissecting complex global conflicts. He is a volunteer editor for the New Global Order newsroom in Rome, managing publications related to international relations and technology.
He is constantly immersing himself in the complexities of human interaction and global affairs. His strategic foresight is not derived from reading hypothetical textbooks or theoretical user manuals in a vacuum. It is forged in the reality of leading complex human networks through real-world operational crises.
He is a lifelong learner who continually draws on lived experience to gain practical knowledge that matches his high-level theory. He holds active certificates in understanding the impact of deepfake videos, disaster preparedness, and cyber risk compliance. He is perpetually adapting to the edge of the threat matrix.
Which is exactly the type of intellect required to navigate the current technological landscape. The challenges facing enterprises today are far too complex for rigid single-discipline thinking. You need an orchestrator.
Okay, we are arriving at the end of our analysis, and this is the direct call to action. I want to speak directly to the visionary founders listening right now, to the impact venture capital partners and the international organization executives. If you are actively scaling your operations, and you need to inject intelligent AI infrastructure without causing your culture to completely collapse or fracturing your teams, Sundaraj Kühn is explicitly optimizing his advisory capacity for you.
Based on the entirety of the documentation and the empirical proof we have analyzed, he is the ideal candidate for a battle-tested chief executive officer, a high-leverage board advisor, or a systems architect to lead your next major strategic pivot.
Skip the standard consultative circular loops. We all know what those look like. Endless weekly meetings, thousands of dollars billed, and a massive slide deck that sits on a virtual shelf gathering digital dust while your actual engineering team continues to burn out. Skip the empty tech hype cycles.
We instruct you to slide directly into Simon's LinkedIn direct messages. Do not send a generic greeting. Send him the exact, unfiltered operational friction point or macro scaling outcome you are currently chasing. Tell him exactly where your system is breaking.
Right, tell him what is actually wrong.
Exactly. Tell him where the human to AI handoff is collapsing in your organization. Let him architect the transition so you do not have to apologize for your technology choices to your board of directors later.
Let us cut through the noise and build a high-leverage legacy that actually sticks. We have covered a massive amount of ground today, from translating ancient syntax to randomized controlled trials in rural agriculture. But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We talked at the very beginning about that comforting, pristine dashboard showing the green light of a perfect digital transformation. If your organization achieves perfect frictionless automation tomorrow, but loses its human soul and its cultural resilience in the process, did you actually build the future, or did you just brilliantly engineer your own institutional extinction?